Hey everybody, welcome again to another fun and exciting episode of The Quick Draw. I'm really excited today. We've got a fun topic and a fun guest. Me, your host, Mike, as always, with my co-host, John. We are the Orner Young Guns. We have a very special guest tonight with us, Annafi Wahed, who is a former campaign staffer. Is that right?
That's right.
For the Hillary Clinton campaign. So she's kind of walking into lines then. Here, guys, be nice. She's really nice. I like her. I want her to come back. I've only been speaking to her for 10 minutes, and I really like her. So please be nice. And bonus points if you guys are watching this live and are in the live chat, if you can actually guess her real age, you won't guess it. Anyway, so she's also the founder of the flipside.io, which is kind of like the less of center version of us, which is really awesome. So welcome to the program, Annafi. It's really great to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, this is not my first time walking into a lion's den. I was at CPAC. It was amazing. Yeah.
Wow. You know, it's funny you mentioned that because I think CPAC is a lion's den for even some conservatives nowadays.
It is, yeah. I was gonna say there are.
we had at Political Math on as a guest not too long ago, and he was describing the scene. He's like, I don't think I can go back anymore.
It was fascinating. It was obviously my first CPAC, and I was scared to go, actually. I was like, oh my God, I'm a former Hillary campaign staffer. Like, they're going to lynch me. It's going to be awful. But actually, I had an awesome time. I had a couple of friends who I knew through, like, doing flipside things. And that was my first op-ed published in the Wall Street Journal about my experience and about the fact that I am... I actually didn't talk about this in the op-ed, but I'm standing there, having worked for Hillary the last 4 months of 2016, and they're chanting, lock her up. And I'm just like, oh my God, can they smell the Hillary in me?
It's fear. It's the fear that they smell. What would that smell like? Ben Gay and...
It's basically what I felt
sadness.
Like. She basically probably felt like what I felt like walking through Harlem back in 2008.
Yeah.
Just don't
funny?
Talk.
John, I think I would be less intimidated walking through Harlem than you. That's what's funny about that.
It's sad. It's sad that right now we'd have to actually question that because, I'm sorry, because I don't know if you remember in 2008 back when Obama was running and they had like all these like loudspeakers playing like what were they playing? Louis Farrakhan speeches and pictures with like slaves with welts on their backs and stuff.
Wow.
And I'm just sort of like, really? I was like, I better not say anything. Like I can't talk in those circles because the minute
he's not allowed to because he knows if he shows the welts that I give him, then he's fired.
Plus I can't talk. The minute I say anything, because it's like, why do you talk? Because that's what they did in high school. Why do you talk like a white person?
Really?
Just speaking.
Oh, I heard that all the time. Not to me, because that's kind of obvious why. But no, like because I grew up in South Florida, and my high school was like 60% black.
Right.
Most of it was Haitian, and the Haitian kids and the American blacks did not get along.
No,
and
no.
and the American blacks would say that a lot to the Haitians.
Why do you talk like a white guy?
Why do you talk white? Why do you talk white? And it's like, he's educated?
I'm just saying, and I've seen that, like I said, my own parents are kind of a good indicator that Africans and Black Americans don't get along well.
I've been called a coconut.
Really?
And if you think about what a coconut is,
got the
right on the inside. So
it's like Oreo. It's
horrible.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like Oreo. Actually, it's basically the same insult because what they're saying it's the same thing. It's just that you're brown, I'm black, same difference. But it's the same idea. You're white on the inside. It's like because apparently that means that what I think for myself and I don't know what.
We're seeing that with Kanye now.
Right, exactly.
They're all like, oh my God, Kanye, how dare you wear a MAGA hat? And it's like,
right.
Well,
Plus, it's funny.
The funny thing with the Kanye thing
Kanye's
is
crazy.
he's gonna flip the moment it's convenient for him. I don't think this is like an epiphany for him all of a sudden. Like,
Right.
the guy was on TV like what, 8 years ago saying Bush hates black people. Like, he's not like. I don't. Maybe he is. Maybe people change. People change. I shouldn't be too harsh on.
I don't think we should be looking to Kanye West for policy decisions.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
You notice like.
He's a bit of a Johnny-come-lately. Let's put it that way.
Well, because the left is like, oh my God, he's gone crazy. It's like, have you read his tweets for the last 10 years? It's like, he's been crazy. What are you talking about?
Exactly. That's my thing. I was like, why is this even news? Like, he's a weird person. I don't even know anything about him. I remember in high school there was that Jesus Walk song that was a hit.
Oh, I don't know.
That's the one where he kind of alludes that he is Jesus, right?
I don't remember it that way. I thought it was an inspirational song. Actually, it was a good song. It was about.
I haven't listened to any of his music.
See, on here I was going to say, if you
hadn't
noticed that between the two of us, if you make hip hop references, it's more likely that he knows them than I do. So, so we're off the wall that way too.
Kanye's not hard enough for me. He's not angry or hard enough for me.
Really?
I need angry music. Yes.
What was it? Is it 4 Fs or was it 5?
It's 4 Fs. Anything that you can fight to, fuck to, foreplay, or fast drive. That's the kind of music I like to listen to.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so
cool.
that's
now, Annafi, you mentioned this. You wrote an op-ed for the. I keep wanting to say Washington for some reason. Wall Street Journal. Really great op-ed. What I thought was kind of interesting about it was you are very open about coming out and saying, guys. And this is to your side, like to the left.
My fellow liberals.
Yes, guys, we've got to be nicer to the people on the right. Like,
right,
can we do that?
Exactly, and it was amazing. There were over 1,000 comments in the op-ed. I had Twitter trolls telling me I need to leave the Democratic Party and that the Democratic Party doesn't need people like me. And frankly, it's the most boring message in the world, right? It's what they teach you in kindergarten: be nice to other people.
See, you're nicer than I am because I would have trolled them. I would have been like, "What do you mean, people like me?
What do you mean, you people?
What do you mean, you people?"
Yeah, well, so it's always funny for me to when we get angry emails, and we get angry emails from both sides. So what the flipside.io does is it curates op-eds and commentaries from both liberal and conservative media. So I'm a liberal, and my co-editor Jahan is a staunch conservative, and we have a team of liberals and conservatives, and we're genuinely trying to find the best of both sides to present to our readers in 5 minutes. And so often we get angry emails from liberals saying, oh my God, we're unfairly, criticizing their side, or from conservatives who are saying, oh, we're too anti-Trump. And my inclination is always to say something sassy back. But as the founder of my company, I can't really do that. So I have to be all, normal and tame and like, we're so sorry, we'll take that into consideration. But really, I just be like, screw you.
That's like the New Yorker version of bless your heart.
Right, and that's what a Southerner would say. I was going to say, honestly, and your article, I read it finally when WSJ stopped asking me to subscribe in order to read it, which was literally like half an hour ago.
Yes.
And we were also kind of contrasting that with an article from Jesse Kelly over at the Federalist. And I know that part of this was about, how do you, because I liked your mission statement at the flip side, because it was like, basically it's that question that people are asking now is how does the right and left coexist with each other? Yeah. And I really think that the problem is that the left, if you want to use the blanket term, is kind of moving its own boundary left anyway, to the point that people on the left still aren't on the left. Because if you look at people like Steven Pinker and Brett Weinstein, people who are obvious leftists, and yet they're not welcome on the left. I think the left is kind of moving left.
I mean,
real quick, Annafi, what do you, when you say you're liberal, like,
right?
I know this is an unfair question, so I apologize.
Because
I hate political labels.
Okay.
We use them all the time. So when you say liberal conservative, what do you mean by that? What to you makes you liberal, and what would make someone conservative?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, it is, because I mean, you've got left and right, and Republican and Democrat, and conservative and liberal, and those terms are not all the same, right? I'm a liberal. I call myself a liberal because I believe in a strong social safety net, right?
Okay.
I'm a first generation immigrant. I was the beneficiary of an excellent public education system in New York City, right? I was able to go to Hunter College High School, which is one of the best high schools in the country, because it was a public school. And then I received Pell Grants and scholarships to go to Bryn Mawr College, which is one of the seven sister colleges. And then I was able to succeed. I had a successful financial career before I moved on to politics and media. And so for me, I want to make sure that the opportunities I had growing up, that we secure for the next generation. Okay. I am a self-described feminist, though there are a lot of feminists who don't speak for me. I will admit that.
Okay. Well, it makes sense. It's probably best that they don't.
There's a lot of crazy women
considering the fact that if you let feminists speak for you, you're going to sound like you're totally unable to take care of yourself, because that's the way it sounds,
I am pro-choice. I believe abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. I think the little guy is being screwed over, right? I started my career actually at the FDIC. I was a bank regulator, and I saw firsthand through my job, doing risk management at different banks, how the consumer compliance laws are really, really necessary to protect people from being scammed by the big banks, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Then, of course, I sold my soul and went into consulting. But, we won't
hold it against you.
Exactly. So, yeah, I'm a liberal. I think, I'm all for LGBTQ rights. I think, that about covers it all, I think.
Okay. No, I wanted to say, because one of the things that John and I do, is we're very careful not to use the term liberal when we mean leftists.
Right.
And the reason why is because, like you said, to us, those terms have very different meanings. Like when we think of a liberal, I prefer the term in the classical sense. I know John does too.
Right. Free markets, etc.
Free markets. It's more than free markets. Free markets I see as a byproduct. Mm-hmm. So a means, not the end. The end is the Declaration of Independence. It's life, liberty, and property rights. And what you can accomplish while protecting those things, I think, is fine. So a lot of the things you mentioned, so there's some things that we're staunchly against, like I'm not going to bend on abortion ever, but some things like immigration, human rights, basic human rights. Even a social safety net, I think conservatives can come to terms with people like you, liberals, because we can say, look, all right, as long as we all agree to certain rules, and as long as we agree to play by those rules, and as long as we're not putting those rules on everybody, but rather just the community that we have influence over. Like, I'm perfectly okay with social programs at the state and local level. Mm-hmm. I mean, it depends on the social program. It depends on how efficient it is. But at state and local level, I can control it. Right. I can go to town hall meetings. I can vote in my local elections. I have more of a voice than
even the municipal level, if you can swing it. But I was going to say, as long as it's not done, it's federal ones that you generally have an issue with.
So that's interesting. So how do you feel about California right now? Because they are suddenly the champion of states' rights, right? When they are,
I think that's funny.
Yeah, it's kind of hilarious considering things they've said in the past, because I was going to say, although you have to consider the Cal 3 proposal, which I'm laughing at too, because clearly not all of California agrees on this point, because now they want to split into 3 states.
Correct.
And so and I'm getting to the point where I feel like actually that may not be a bad thing. I'd rather they split than secede. Let's put it that way.
If California, let me put it this way: if California wants to bankrupt itself, as long as Colorado, which is where I live, doesn't have to bail them out, go for it. Do it. I don't care.
California is the 5th largest economy in the world.
I'm not saying they're going to bankrupt us. I'm saying hypothetically, if they want to.
Okay.
Hypothetically, if they want to spend all their tax revenue on things that are going to are insolvable, right?
Or insoluble, yeah.
Or insolvent is what I meant. Sorry, insolvent.
Then, we're both.
Go ahead. It's you are the taxpayer. It's closely knit. It's local. You have a say. Do what you want.
Okay, yeah.
As long as it doesn't break my leg or pick my pocket, I don't care.
Right.
Where I do think they go a little too far is with sanctuary cities, for example. I think that's
right.
I think immigration policy is a bit of a marble cake. Is the analogy that I've heard used and like to use.
Marble cake. Okay, I
partly
have not
state,
heard
partly
that term.
federal.
So you've got so you have federal government and you have state and local government, right? And they each have their sphere where they're allowed. That's kind of distinct,
right? Right.
But there are some instances where there's a bit of overlap.
Right.
Immigration is an interesting topic for me because my wife is an immigrant. My wife is she's Chilean. She's naturalized American now, but she is from South America. And so we went through the whole immigration process. So I'm very familiar with the immigration process. I'm very sympathetic to immigrants who come to this country, who want to work hard and assimilate. I don't care where you're from. If you love the Declaration of Independence and you love this country and you want to work your tail off and be successful, come on in. You're American as far as I can. I
had such a funny experience because I'm also naturalized, and so I had to take the citizenship test. And this is during college. And so I go to the office, and the guy's asking me a bunch of questions, and he says, "Are you currently or have you ever been part of a terrorist organization?" And I just burst out laughing.
Yes, absolutely.
Answer that question.
Yes. Everyone would be like, actually, yes, I'm a member of Al Qaeda. Like, what's up? It was such a comical question. Thankfully, he had a sense of humor and didn't lock me up. He was like, we have to ask, blah, blah, blah. It was a funny experience.
And look, I'm big on immigration reform. I understand people's frustration with rampant lawless immigration, but I think between the two extremes of building a wall, which I don't support, and open borders, there's a compromise.
Yes, there is definitely a compromise.
There's a huge spectrum of stuff in between we can agree on.
I mean, Democrats were voting for a border fence, in the 90s. Under President Obama, I think we deported just as many immigrants to date as we have during the Trump administration. And actually, a higher percentage of the people the Trump administration has deported thus far have been criminals compared to President Obama. Now,
and I think Obama deported more than Bush, if I recall correctly.
He did. He deported many, many, many more than Bush. I don't have the exact stats in front of me. So it's really interesting that this is such a hot button issue. I mean, it's a hot button issue because of Trump's rhetoric, right? Like, he goes on stage at the podium and he's like, "Oh my God, all Muslims must be banned." So of course we're like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" I mean, in many ways, Trump is his own worst enemy, right?
Yeah, but to be fair,
you gotta say the same about the left too, though.
Right. I was gonna say,
Absolutely.
somebody made a comment on Twitter recently that I said I think is perfect, because it said a lot of Trump supporters tend to think Trump is like this genius, and it's like, no, he's not that smart. He's just opposed by people who are even dumber than he is. The thing is that, but
you know what? No argument.
Because it's like when he's the matador to their charging bull, because he can literally just say, "I'm just going to take this position." The left will always predictably take the anti-position, even if it's something just absolutely reprehensible to take. Because the whole thing with MS-13 and their animals, you actually are getting the left. They're defending MS-13. It's like, really? It was like, again, I don't think Trump is the smartest guy in the world, because he isn't. The thing is,
that I will definitely agree with. He is not the smartest person in the world.
I was actually thinking about this earlier today. Like, I honestly believe that Hillary Clinton and Trump have similar character flaws. I mean, in some ways, not in every way, but in some ways they have similar character flaws.
Okay.
It's just that Hillary's an elitist and Trump's a populist.
Okay.
And in this case, Trump's flaws worked in his favor.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That's what it boiled down to.
What they have in common?
Well, because
they're both I mean, if you had asked me this in 2016, I would have said they're both big government progressives. I still think at his core, Trump is a big government progressive. I mean, historically, he loves eminent domain, and he likes wielding government as a cudgel to get what he wants.
But
if I look at his track record since he got elected, he's behaved very much like a conservative, like you would expect a conservative president to behave. So I can't complain too much. I really can't complain too much about what he's done as a president. Or if I do complain, I often say, "You're not going far enough, bud."
well, plus I say,
get rid of it. I don't want it. Go.
It's also all the scandals around.
I want to get rid of the IRS. Come on.
And also, it's the scandals around him. I think that's what it is. So a lot of someone pointed out recently. Actually, it was Ben Shapiro. Because I quote him a lot. But the thing is just that
he's
saying that younger conservatives actually do not like Trump all that much. The older ones do, but he gave a reason why. Is he was saying that for younger conservatives, they tend not to remember the Clinton days. See, a lot of older ones do, where with Clinton, this whole question of character, because a lot of younger conservatives are saying, okay, character-wise, he's not so great.
Right.
But they also remember, the older ones remember, hey, the character question got thrown out when we tried to say it about Clinton, so you don't get to say anything now. And so they're saying, whereas younger ones weren't there for the Clinton stuff, real young ones, because I was, but, we're older than we look, by the way. And you're not the only one who can say that.
John's a baby face.
But
John is
kind of. I shaved. Okay, the first time I shaved in my life, I was 29. But anyway,
wow.
But that's just it. The Clinton days kind of shot down the left's ability to now come in. His character, he is not fit to be president. Hey, character got thrown out years ago. You said it's just sex, so now you can't come back. But a lot of young conservatives weren't.
And that ties back to, I think, to your earlier question about like how we feel about states' rights. Like, I'm okay with states' rights, but I don't think California's really being all that genuine. No. Like, they didn't care about state rights under Bush or under Obama.
To be fair, Bill Clinton, extremely problematic. No argument about that. But
that's a very political way to put it. Somebody learned a thing or two working on the Hillary campaign.
But I mean, Trump's rhetoric is just unbelievably stupid at best.
That's
right. And, you just look at his Twitter feed and you're like, what the hell are you doing? Right. One of the requirements of the commander-in-chief of, the leader of the free world should be moral leadership. He shouldn't be saying we should ban all Muslims. He shouldn't be saying, all Mexicans are rapists. Like, when he makes, sweeping statements like that, it makes us hate him. It makes us just question whether he has the right state of mind, right? That's what we take a problem with. We're genuinely concerned if he's making a decision because he had a bad cheeseburger or Fox and Friends told him, or if he's actually listening to his advisors.
I'm with you on that, but the one thing is, he did not say that all Mexicans are rapists, nor did he say that ban all Muslims, or at least the policy certainly wasn't that, because they were like, oh, it's a Muslim ban, but it's like, well, no.
Yes, the policy wasn't that, but the policy actually was, despite the chaotic way in which they did it, it was 7 countries that the Obama administration had actually,
right. And I think, and that's where I think
identified.
That's where I think we need to be able to have this conversation. Like, okay, Trump says stupid things, and his rhetoric.
Yeah, no question.
I mean, the reason why John and I were never Trump during the election is because we had no track record. He didn't have a history in politics. He wasn't a politician.
Yep.
So we couldn't point to policies.
He wanted to run as a Democrat and was thinking about Oprah Winfrey as his running mate. very
and that's the interesting thing about that is, would Democrats hate him as much had he done that? Like, that's where I feel like this focus on his rhetoric can get really unhealthy, because people say stupid things all the time. Hyperbole is almost par for the course if you're going to be a politician, especially if you're a populist. Populists tend to rely on hyperbole more than elitists. As in to say, elitists don't use hyperbole. It's just a different type of hyperbole, aka the basket of deplorables. That wasn't good rhetoric, but
not a good moment.
That was her.
It was not a good. It was not one of her shiny moments. And what, to be fair, it wasn't her worst moment.
No, not even
also
close.
understatement of the year.
Wasn't her worst moment. But so yeah, in 2016, well, yeah, we weren't nervous. We're like, okay, this guy sounds like a progressive strongman. Like he's running as a conservative. He's going to get into office, and then he's just going to double down on Obama stuff, and we're going to be just as miserable as we were under Obama.
Right.
So.
And we worried that conservatives would call it conservatism because he'd claim he's a conservative, and then everything he did would become conservatism. So we were actually, so we were pleasantly surprised by the policy because we're like, oh, thank God. At least he's not going to be going around doing a bunch of things Obama did, but now suddenly they're conservative. That was what we were really worried about. Was so.
And you could make the argument that in saner times, we judge people by their rhetoric, and at the very least we say, look, okay, his policies are one thing, and that's great that he's not actually following through in his rhetoric, but he's the leader of the free world. He should think before he talks.
Yes.
Right?
That's all we have.
But there's a but. There's a little asterisk. But when you consider the reaction of his opponents, some Trump supporters, I don't know if this is true or not. I can't speak to this, but some Trump supporters believe that he's doing this deliberately. This isn't him being stupid. This is him actually being very, very clever.
Right. He's playing like 19th dimensional chess that he has a grand.
It's bait. I mean, I don't buy that. It's bait. And the left they take the bait every time. Like whether it's deliberately bait or whether it's just he's being retarded.
I mean,
they trip over themselves.
My biggest problem, and it's funny as I say this, I was like, oh, I literally just did the thing that I'm gonna say the left should stop doing, which is that we're focused on his rhetoric, right? And he's not any crazier today than he was in 2016.
Right, like Kanye. Again, that's the irony of it all.
How crazy he was in 2016, or stupid, or whatever.
Yeah, he's no different.
He's exactly the person he was in the Oval Office as he was in 2016. And people went and voted for him. This is what they chose, right? They chose this over Hillary Clinton. And I think,
well,
not this, but like they chose Trump as a whole, as a package.
Well, right. I would, and maybe I'm overthinking this, and maybe this is too nuanced. But I think a lot of the people we know personally that voted for Trump, they didn't vote for Trump. They voted against Hillary. And if anybody else had been running against Trump as the Democratic candidate, let me put it this way: if Joe Biden had run against Trump, I think Biden would have won. I think we'd be talking about Joe Biden's President Biden's gaffes. But
fair. That's fair. Actually, what you said earlier made me think of this fun thing. If ever either of you want to do like a fun mockumentary series, you should go make a mockumentary about 2016 where Ted Cruz is the Republican nominee and 2000 Donald Trump that was a Democrat, that was pro-choice, donated to Planned Parenthood, I think, wanted Oprah Winfrey to be his running mate. If that was the 2016 election,
Democrat ticket, right?
And you like interview people, Democrats who are like, well, like yes, his rhetoric is problematic, but he's a progressive, whatever. I think really interesting.
Which you actually bring up a good point, because this is something that I've said in the past, here and elsewhere, is Ted Cruz's, I think, his biggest mistake in the primaries was when the media tried to corner him on Trump's rhetoric on Mexicans and immigrants, and tying them to the criminal element. Ted Cruz should not have said, "Oh, no, look, guys, Trump's terrific. You're not going to get me to fight him. Blah. He's a wonderful conservative. Blah blah blah." What Cruz should have done is gone for the throat and killed two birds with one stone, and said, "Well, yeah, he said it. What do you expect? He's a New York progressive. Of course, he's racist."
Well,
that would have knocked Trump out of the race. That would have left the media with egg on their face. Trump would have been like, Cruz, you would have seen like little sunglasses come down over his face and like deal with it, come down on the subtitles.
Thug life, but like okay, so I can just, here's the thing. Okay, so as somebody who, even though I sometimes try to avoid it. Somehow race issues always become a big issue with me. But here's the thing. If you go back to 2000,
why.
if you go back to 2000, yeah, right? It has to be. As a black conservative, it's just inevitable. But if you go back to 2008, I think, because again, people kept saying that, oh, well, this was a white lash, you know, that white people voted for Trump.
Right.
But here's the thing. Okay, so there was a thread on Twitter recently. Mike, you know which one it was. The one, I forget his name. He goes by at Dr. Vox, the one who put this whole thing about how we've tried in vain to reach out to suburban and rural whites, and they just don't listen to us. It's like, gee, I wonder why they don't listen to you. And this goes back to Obama. So Obama in 2008 ran because it has a lot to do with the history of the nation. Obama ran as a post-racial candidate. He said, basically, yes, the country's horribly, horribly racist, which was stupid. But the thing is, he said that, and he said, but if you vote for me, it'll show that you're not. Even some Republican voters said, okay, we can't not vote for the black guy. So they did it. And then he won. And then he just said, okay, and that changes nothing. Everyone's racist again. And so he went for
not what Obama did.
He went for 4 years. 2012 comes and the same thing happened again, where they say, okay, you know, we're trying to show we're not. So we're going to vote this guy again. So the same thing happens.
I think that played less of a role in the second term. I think
maybe, yes. Somewhat,
I think you can make the argument that white guilt played a role in 2008. I think you can make that argument
less than 12, but
let's vote for the black guys because we want to. It's a historic moment. We all want we want the world to see, hey, America's not racist. See, we voted for a black president. Like that element, whether we want to acknowledge or not, whether it's ugly to acknowledge that or not, it played a role.
Right. Yeah, which is ironic because that was actually why he won. As opposed to what black people were saying, he'd lose because he's the black guy, and it didn't happen.
But in 2012, it was more anti-Romney than it was racial. By 2012, Obama couldn't run on race anymore because it had already been done.
Right.
So it was more anti-Romney than it was, I think, pro-Obama.
I think President Obama did I think 2008 his campaign was inspiring. I don't think it was just about race. I think it was a genuine.
Well, I don't think those things. I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. I think those things work together. Like he inspired the country by saying, "Look, we are past all this racial grievance."
Right. And actually, you know, he was half black, half white, which is like, a melting pot, right? It was great. But yeah, to your point, I mean, there are over 200 counties, 206 counties to be exact, across the country that voted for President Obama twice, that turned around and voted for Donald Trump in 2016, right?
Right.
Donald Trump actually won a higher, was it percentage or raw numbers? I forget. But won a greater proportion, I think, of Black and Latino votes than Romney did in 2012. Right. So to say that, you know, it's all white lash or whatever the term is.
You're right, it's not. And I'm saying that was what was said. And I said, but the reason why a lot of whites voted for Trump is because Michael Massey said this back in like 2014, where he said, you can only call whites, you know, this whole intersectional thing, you can only throw the race thing out so long before this hits you back. And, you know, because the problem is whether anyone likes it or not, the most whites in this country are not racist. Okay. Right. The thing is that if you keep calling them that without justification, eventually they're going to turn on you. And the thing is that I think a lot of Democrats acted like they were safe. We're good. We don't need to worry about it. It'll be fine. We can just keep up with the same thing. Hillary thought, I can just take it from Obama. He passes the baton. I keep right on going. And it blew up in her face because it hit a point where they said, you know what? I'm just going to vote for the guy who's not calling me a bigot. Okay. Right. You know, and again, do I like him that much? No. But do I?
I want to ask you a question about this. Because I think it kind of ties to your company and the op-ed that you wrote. Do you think, first, let me ask you this. Do you think it's fair to say that there's nuance to racism?
Oh, absolutely. Of course. Yeah.
Like there's a difference between a sheet-wearing Klansman and somebody who lives out in the West who's just never met a black person and they think they all act like BET people.
So I give talks on college campuses and high school campuses and things like that. I went to my alma mater, Bryn Mawr College, recently, And someone came up to me later, and she was saying, she's a freshman, and she was saying that she's from a small town, and she hasn't met a lot of people from diverse backgrounds. And she said, but I'm so afraid to ask a question because if I phrase it incorrectly or I ask the wrong question, I'll get labeled a racist, right?
They're all the wrong questions.
Right.
Well, and this actually segues really nice to this segues actually what I really want to ask is, okay, how do you get the left then to understand that nuance? Because here's the thing, and I imagine you've experienced this, and we've even seen this with conservatives who have said, look, even with the KKK, like you attract more flies with honey than vinegar. If you show love and tolerance to people whose views you find reprehensible, you're more likely to convert them. Right? Yeah, and people what do they get called? Nazi sympathizers, KKK sympathizers. Like, how do you inject that nuance? How do you get people who see racism as kind of like the worst thing you can be? Like, it almost feels like in some cases that being a racist, from the left's point of view, is worse than being like a pedophile.
Yeah, just ask Salon. Anyway.
Oh, come on.
So the New York Times ran a great article about the intellectual dark web, as they call it, the growing number of people, they're dissenters on both sides who are saying, hey, we should listen to the other side. And actually, Senator Orrin Hatch just wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal talking about identity politics, right? So it's hard because I do think who we are affects how we view the world, right? So the fact that I am female, I am South Asian, I was raised Muslim, I grew up in New York City, all of those things affect my viewpoint of the world.
Right. Fair.
But at the same time, it's funny because I feel like this is not PC. I don't know who's watching this. This may come back.
It doesn't matter.
This is not a PC crowd. Don't worry.
But I mean, I think the fact that I am these things actually gives me a lot more freedom to talk than if I were a white male, right? If I were a white male saying, "Oh, we should listen to conservatives," people would be like, "Oh my God, look at him. He's XYZ. He's secretly racist or secretly Trump supporter or secretly this, whatever."
You see.
And
we see that, I've seen that in my own life just because my wife is Hispanic.
Right.
Like, it's extremely, and also I also think not voting for Trump is the same thing. Like,
right, exactly.
By not voting for Trump and by being married to a Hispanic woman, I can say all kinds of things.
Yeah, you're right.
And if people try to throw it in my face, like, you're just an evil white racist Trump supporter, I'm like, I didn't vote for Trump and my wife's Hispanic. Kiss my ass.
Right, and I have the same thing where I can say, no, I'm black, and and for what it's worth, I guess my dad is African, so I have the immigrant thing there too. I didn't vote for Trump either. So the thing is that no, so you have, but it is true, you have the ability because. But see, this is the problem, I think. This is the reason, again, part of why you got Trump, because you're telling white guys basically shut up. Remember, what was the
Sit down and shut up!
Remember the Democratic chairman? I don't know if they actually took her, but the one that on stage was saying it's my job to shut white people down, when they try to talk, it's my job to
Was it Debbie?
Not Wasserman Schultz. It was
Tom
someone
Perez?
else. They had it was a woman. It was because they had Wasserman Schultz, then she got booted. Then they had Brazil. She got booted, because of course she was going to. But it was a woman after that.
Really sexist.
I don't remember her name, but she said that when white people try to talk, it's my job to make shut them up. And see that message right there. That's what a lot of Trump people were hearing. All that right there. That you're white, therefore you're a racist, you're a bigot, you hate women, and we're not going to hear from you. We don't want to hear from you. We just we have our label for you. We don't care what you say. We're not even going to listen. We just decided for you what you are. And they said, fine, then I'll vote for the person who isn't saying that. And so and I think that's where I think a lot of the left has hurt itself. Because it's dealing with categories that are not important. The intersectionality crowd is going to kill it. It's going to kill the left it's going to hurt itself very badly, because the whole intersectionality thing is not compatible with the ideas in the Declaration of Independence. It's not compatible with that. So if that's the message that the left is trying to push, it's going to backfire every time. It may take time, but it will.
And it's interesting. I think people, I think there has been a recognition, not from the powers that be, but from regular progressives and regular Democrats and regular liberals that like, oh, we're venturing a little on the, the deep end.
Yeah, you're kind of going nuts with this.
I mean, Linda Sarsour does not speak for the Muslim community. She went a few months ago and, said she wanted to reclaim the word jihad, and every single Muslim I know was like, no.
Please don't.
Yeah, please just let that go, please.
Nope, that's not a thing.
Abort!
It's the dumbest thing. It's the worst thing she's probably said since she wanted to take away Ayaan Hirsi Ali's vagina.
Yeah, like no Muslim I know thought that. They were like, no, we don't want that word. That word can stay over there, far away from me, as far the fuck away from me as you can.
And I would actually.
Okay, so that's. I'm really glad you said that, because I'm kind of that makes me hopeful.
Right.
That people are on both sides are looking at their side and going,
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But okay, then why aren't these sides talking to each other? That's my question. Right. If Jesse, we mentioned earlier, the article that Jesse Kelly wrote about the divorce.
Yeah.
And we need to have an amicable divorce before things get really ugly. I don't agree with it. I do not agree with that. Yeah, I agree with his assessment. Right. I do think there is a problem.
I agree.
Yes. And I think that if we continue down that path, he is right. It will get ugly and it will get violent.
Right.
I don't think a divorce will solve that problem.
Probably not.
And I also don't like the idea, like if I as a conservative feel that the other side is brutalizing me or taking advantage of me, I don't like the idea of if it's going to be divorce, it's not going to be an amicable divorce. It's going to be an ugly divorce where I get everything. Okay? I'm that kind of asshole. All right?
not giving anything up.
I'm not giving you shit. But why aren't these sides talking to each other then? I mean, we read your op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, and it was great. I mean, that is exactly what Americans on both sides need to hear, I think. Look, guys, we don't have to agree on everything. And I tell the story all the time. Like, I'm very conservative. My parents tease me, and I'm the only person in my family that didn't vote for Trump. And my parents tell me I'm too far. My parents tell me I'm too far right.
That's kind of ironic, actually.
I know. My parents have told me that I'm so far right I can't make a left-hand turn. But I tell the story all the time because I went to BYU. That's where I graduated. Mm-hmm. My mentor in college, the professor I consider a mentor, like he is the reason why I am as conservative as I am, that I have the political and religious views that I do. He was a self-avowed, proud, his words, not mine, flaming liberal Democrat who voted for Obama twice. Which this is BYU, okay? This is a Mormon college. That's like a unicorn, all right?
Yeah.
But I had took him for like 4 classes. We were like best buds. We would spend hours in his office talking about politics. This was during the 2008 like the big Obamacare debate. So we had huge debates about that. And he shaped a lot of my views because of those exchanges. Yeah, which is ironic because he's like flaming liberal Democrat who voted for Obama twice, and I'm very conservative. But why aren't these conversations happening then? Why does that story feel so unique? So, well, my answer is going to be one of the many, many things that we need to fix is this decentralized media environment, right? So not only are we geographically apart, right? Liberals all live in New York and California, and conservatives all live in, everywhere else. Spread out. But you have, back in the day, there were, 3 TV channels and 2 newspapers, and that's what everybody read. But now, between, Sean Hannity, Rachel Maddow, Facebook, and Twitter, you can basically curate your own reality, and you're living in a echo chamber, both physically, because you're only hanging out with people whose political views you share, and then even online, if you're only following Ezra Klein or Ben Shapiro, or you're only following Jonah Goldberg, or pick someone on the left. So we have. But were we really? I mean, is it really that different than? Because and this is an example. This is something that comes up a lot. People talk about the different media. Right. Yeah. And how it's become so less objective, right? Right. And one of the things I try to call out is this, what I call the myth of objective media. The media was never objective. Yes, that's true. I will agree with that. In fact, in the 17th and 18th century, it was more biased and more unreliable for news and facts than anything we have today.
Yeah.
And yet, which I think speaks to the nobility of the founders saying we still need to protect the freedom of the press, even though most media back then was more like InfoWars than the New York Times. But even then, I mean, if you take out the Revolutionary War, because that was a bit of an anomaly, we weren't that divided as a country. Like, we weren't so split apart. So where's the breakdown? What
is interesting is that populism is rising across many countries, right? This is not a uniquely U.S. situation.
Brexit, anyone?
Yeah, exactly. What is interesting is you've got this, echo chamber problem mixed with the fact that there are real concerns people have, and it's less. I've said this, and to some extent, it's less true now, but it's still true, and I want to keep working on this, is that I am more comfortable talking to someone at a bar in Bangkok, in Paris, in Singapore, in London, than I am talking to a rural farmer in New Hampshire, right? My life experience resembles that of other people who grew up in rural areas, who worked in finance, who worked in law, who worked in whatever service jobs, as they call it, versus someone who lives in a rural area who has been, working quote unquote blue collar jobs, right? And so you have this.
We need to get you come visit me in Colorado, and we'll take you to the shooting range.
Yeah, totally. You have to. I've been to the shooting range, actually.
You have? Okay.
Really? They have those in New York?
Yeah, you don't get to pop that cherry. That's
so much fun.
Really? I thought New York would have raised them all by now.
No, it was in Texas, actually. So.
Oh, okay. Well, that explains it. So they probably did.
Boy, Texas, doing it right.
There's a reason populism is on the rise, which is that we do have we've had an explosion of human population mixed with automation and tech, and I believe in climate change. I think there's, writing on the wall that this is not sustainable. So there's growing anxiety everywhere. And then you have this whole industry that's focused on clickbait and to, further worsen that anxiety. Like, oh my God, the world is ending. Trump is going to get us to a nuclear war tomorrow, blah, 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 right? So it's a confluence of all of these events that are.
I like that you talked about your background, because I was going to say mine is fairly mixed too.
Yeah.
And it does shape a lot of what we deal, what we look at today. Because for instance, I don't purge leftist friends in social media. Like, I try to hold on to them,
right? Because
I think it's important. Even though, yes, some of them will irritate the ever-loving crap out of me. Some of them are outright socialists. Like, I've got one friend from high school. She's an outright socialist. Outright. Do I agree with her on anything? No. But the thing is, I want her there.
Socialism is very trendy these days. I don't know why.
Right. And I want to listen to why. Because I'm the type of person who I want to understand why. Why do you think that socialism is so great? I'm still not clear on that. But part of it, I think, has to do with the internal spirit. Like, I had a talk recently with somebody about the difference in the internal spirit between, say, Americans and Europeans, for instance. Like, I have friends from, like I said, everywhere. One of my friends is Norwegian. Mm-hmm. And he genuinely asked me, what is your issue with government control over your life? So what? He doesn't see that as a big problem. So what if they control? As long as right.
Whereas Americans, I don't want anyone controlling my life, let alone someone who has the authority to beat me over the head or shoot me.
Right. But I think that's important, because I think that's part of the difference between left and right to some extent. It's to a lesser degree in America, but it's still there. I think that you have some people who just see it as, because I have a friend who was trying to describe socialism. He's like, oh, socialism is just where everybody is fair, everything is equal. It's like, you realize what it takes to get that equality, right? But it's like, well, yeah, it's just it's just everyone's equal. People don't do that on their own. That happens because you make it happen, and that means you have to have a lot of control over their lives.
I think I disagree with you there, John. I think you can have an egalitarian society without forcing people to do it. But it's rare obviously because of human nature. But I think what makes an egalitarian society work is when it's free. When you have a free society and they choose to be egalitarian rather than have someone put a gun to their head and say, give till it hurts.
But that depends on what you mean by egalitarian. Thing is, to me, you don't get, again, the equality of outcomes.
It doesn't matter. Let's say completely egalitarian in every sense of the word, both in opportunity and materially. Right? Everybody has sufficient for their wants and their needs.
Yeah.
Right? I believe that is possible. I actually believe that as a Christian, as a Mormon, I believe that is absolutely possible. But people have to choose it. You can't drag them to it. You can't put a gun to their head and say, give till it hurts, because then it doesn't work for a bunch of different reasons.
Yeah.
And then it's not really egalitarian either, because somebody always has to be the one that gets dumped on so that everybody else can benefit. Whereas if everybody's saying, hey, yeah, I don't need this extra $4 million in my paycheck. I make $5 million. $1 million is all I need for me and my family to do the things I want to do and provide for them. Here's $4 million. Go do your thing, right? That's if people did that voluntarily,
right?
It works way better than when you put a gun to someone's head. And I do think it's possible. I think there are examples of it happening. They don't last very long because human nature kicks in, and there's always that
when the group of people is small. But once the group of people gets large enough, I don't think it's doable. There's a saying from Jonah Goldberg. Yes, I know it's from one side, but it's that government can't love you. Any politics based on a different assumption is destined for no good. And I agree with this. This is the idea that the way he writes, if you read the book Liberal Fascism, basically is the idea that the fascist underlying impulse is the idea that we can have a society that looks like the same intimacy as you see in a family or a tribe at a national level. And the problem is you can't. Once you get past a certain number of people, it's impossible to do.
I mean,
government is a wrecking ball. It's always a wrecking ball. You can use a wrecking ball for good things or bad things, but you can't use a wrecking ball to perform brain surgery. And that's just the reality.
So the left is okay. I won't speak to the people who are self-proclaimed socialists, because I don't know. I don't understand that mentality. I don't think socialism is, But left is focused on creating equal opportunity, not equal outcome, right? What we do know is that education works, right? There shouldn't be places in our country where you're working with 20-year-old textbooks. There shouldn't be places where teachers haven't gotten a raise in 10 years. There shouldn't be places where, like the schools are literally crumbling, right? So the left is focused on creating equal opportunity, which you will admit we don't have in our country.
Right, but is that because see, here's the thing where I think we can have an interesting debate and an interesting discussion. Is I agree with you. I agree that education is vital to creating that opportunity. And I think part of the problems that we see today are due to a lack of education, which, by the way, leftists control the education system. So whose fault is that? But the disparity that you're describing, conservatives look at that disparity, and we agree that that's bad. We don't want disparity. We don't want there to be haves and have-nots.
Correct.
Well, let me rephrase that. We don't want there to be rigid haves and have-nots. We know there's always going to be.
Yes.
Right. We always know there's going to be. That's just, and I use this example, and I'll go into and I mentioned my religious beliefs. Like my religion pursues egalitarianism, both materially, spiritually, as well as opportunity. We have actually this belief called the City of Zion, where there is no poor or rich because there's no class. Now that sounds socialist, right? But it's not. There's whole scores of academic literature about why the Mormon concept of a united order is not socialism, which I won't get into.
You should send them to me. I'd love to read it.
But we, I will. I actually do, and we're gonna have you back on because this has been a lot of fun, and you're very fun to talk to, and I feel like we made a new friend, so I always like that.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
But I have this belief that you can have a classless society, right? So the argument that I always use when I explain this to people is like, look, even in a classless society, right, you are going to have people that have more than the other. Why? Let's just use an example. I've got 2 little girls and a wife, right? Annafi, I'm assuming you're a busy career woman, so I'm assuming you're single? Okay. Right. I didn't want to be like insulting. I didn't want to say that like an insulting way.
I have a plant that I'm trying to keep alive, okay? I have a Google Calendar to water the plant. Right? That's where I am in terms of life stage.
Is it a fight?
Okay. And that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that, to each their own. But clearly, my needs, right? Because I've got 3 extra mouths to feed, versus your plant, right? So if everybody has according to their needs, let's just describe a subsistence society where everybody has exactly what they need to survive, right? Comfortably.
Right.
I still have more than you.
Right. Right.
So even in an egalitarian society like the kind that my religion pushes for, you're going to have haves and have-nots. What we don't want is, one, a separation of classes where the people who are rich stay rich, and like you said, social mobility. We don't want the poor to stay poor. We don't want the rich to stay rich. And what conservatives, I think most conservatives feel that way. They may not have the same religious beliefs that I do, obviously, but they see that, they have that same mindset.
Yes.
And what happens is we see the government, especially when it gets involved in picking winners and losers. In other words, saying, okay, you have too much opportunity. We need to, tone it down so these people can have opportunity as well. That locks it in, actually. That creates greater disparity.
Right, because
and one of the things that Thomas Sowell pointed out, he's one of my favorite economists, is how the supposed gap between the rich and the poor, when it widens, when it becomes more monolithic, is typically under progressive policies. It's when progressives are in power that you see that disparity exists.
Interesting. I haven't. You should send that to me too.
Yeah, because and also one thing I take from Sowell.
We'll convert you to conservatism.
right. Or at least
we're gonna wear you down.
My team's been trying. My team's been trying.
Maybe libertarianism, right? Is that
I'm a big believer in reaching across the aisle. Like usually, it's either to slap the other person or to bring them to my side. That's why I reach out.
My thinking is that there's maybe it sounds a little more theological, but the idea that there are certain things beyond human control. So in other words, I think what it is that I think oftentimes the left is trying to control things that are beyond human control. In order to get the type of thing that Mike is talking about, that kind of class society, something internally in human beings has to change. That will not change by human effort. It's something that cannot be changed. So I think that Thomas Sowell wrote a book called A Conflict of Visions, and he talked about the constrained versus the unconstrained vision. The unconstrained tends to believe that human nature can be improved by human effort alone. This is why you got the idea of the new Soviet man, the new Nazi man, the new fascist man, when they're trying to create a new heaven and new earth, according to their words. So the thing is, they're trying to change human nature, whereas the constrained view assumes that human nature is written in stone. You can't change it, therefore you build government around it. And so the free market is the idea that since we know that some people are so self-interested they won't do for anyone else, you make a system so that the only way for them to benefit is to do things for other people. And so that way, the only way for you to indulge in your own selfishness is to actually not be. So I mean,
you see, there's so many. So yes, free markets, but you also need a governing body, right? When free markets go rampant, you have things like the financial crisis, right? That happened because regulators fell asleep at the job. We didn't have strong enough protections for
conservatives, and I've made this argument. Conservatives will argue it was actually government intervention that caused the banking crisis. It was the government picking winners and losers.
Community Reinvestment Act?
Yes, that one.
Among other things, without getting too much in the weeds, because we're kind of winding down, we're running out of time here. But the argument I've made in the past is you had people from the bottom up pressuring. You had activists, people saying, "Hey, we have a right to a home. We deserve. That's the American dream. We deserve the American dream." And then you had politicians that stopped saying, "Yeah, they do. And if you banks don't, give them loans and I don't care how toxic they are, you're a bad person. And we're gonna crack down on you. But hey, guys, don't worry, we'll bail you out."
Yeah,
it's the creative incentives. I'm going to send you a link, Annafi, that I think you'll really like.
Okay.
It's a music video, actually.
Oh, I'm so excited.
I think I know which one it is too.
The Hayek versus Keynes.
Yep, the rap.
Yes.
Wow.
Awesome.
Very
catchy. It's an earworm. There's 2 music videos, so I'll send them both to you.
Cool.
I think you'll like them being a finance person because they go into economics.
Sweet.
I dabble in finance a little bit, so
okay, yeah, I'm a CFA.
We actually have very similar upbringings. Let me put it that way.
Well, so okay.
I'm more an elitist. I'm more at home being with elitists than I am with populists. Let's put it that way.
The problem
I only talk like a populist.
What were
you
you
learn to speak the other side. The problem with loans was that, yes, we encourage banks to actually make loans to people, but then they took it off their books and they securitized it and they put it into a bunch of things, and then Wall Street bought it. It was a disconnect between mainstream banking, which was where the loans were happening, where the loan officer knew the people, and then Wall Street being like, oh, we're going to profit off of this and we're going to put all the risky loans in one place.
I agree with you. I agree with you. You're absolutely right.
That
You're
was
absolutely right.
That was
no, it wasn't. That was the bank saying, "Hey, we can do all kinds of risky shit because the government's going to bail us out."
Right, exactly, and then that was the.
It's a question of incentives, right? If the government had stepped in and said, "Hey, you can't do this risky shit because if you do, it's on you. We're not going to bail you out." And
to be
on top
fair,
of that,
the government wasn't saying make risky loans; they were just saying make loans to people who aren't white.
You're right.
They were saying it doesn't matter what you do. We'll bail you out.
Right, and they incentivized it. So
yeah, it's the law of unintended consequences. When you put the carrot or the stick, expecting a particular result, you don't always get just the result. And they got the results they wanted, but then they got some extra that they're like, oh shit, was this worth it?
But I would, I was gonna say I like these discussions. I was gonna say because they are helpful in that. Indeed, you're right. That at some point you have to do, and this is why I don't let the leftist friends off my friend list, because no matter how much some of their stuff they say makes me want to beat my head against a brick wall, the point is that I need to understand why they think it. Because
and to be fair, I don't think Annafi has said anything that makes me want to put my head in the wall.
You haven't at all. It's actually fascinating and fun because that's the thing is that. But even though they do, I think the important thing is to understand the whys. Even if you think that the thing someone believes is insane, you need to understand why they believe it. Because if you don't understand that, then you're going to just assume motives or ascribe motives to them they don't have. And so, because like with guns, I try to let people understand on guns. There's a reason why I carry a gun. It's not because I just like shooting things and I love shooting. No, it's because it's part of my self-defense strategy. I know a person on Twitter, and I won't name her, but you know who I'm talking about, Mike. She just posted recently she was raped when she was younger. She carries because she doesn't want to be a victim again. Nobody in the gun control movement talks about people like that because they don't even consider that there's a reason why they want to.
I know who you're talking about, but there's another really good one. Dark Seamus Aran. Yeah, she has a great story about, and she's liberal. I mean, she is currently in a lesbian relationship. She's as socially liberal as they come, in my understanding, except on guns. On guns, she
very
is
interesting.
Rah NRA. We've got one of Grey Wolf 76 in the live chat wants to know, where can we find your article, your website?
Oh, it is theflipside.io. It's .io because .com was $4,000 and I can't afford $4,000.
Go figure.
Flipside.io.
You're saying as a New Yorker you can't afford something for $4,000? What the hell?
I'm a New Yorker. I live in Harlem.
Okay, fair enough. Wait. Was it like Spanish Harlem or is it Harlem?
I'm in right by Hamilton Heights, so West Harlem.
Okay. So yeah, it's not quite
It's not quite Spanish Harlem. But no, actually, it's funny. I worked in finance for 4 years, so I could afford to pay off all of my student loans because college tuition is ridiculous. And then saved up some money so my mom could put a down payment on a condo. Yay, American dream, guys! That's why I'm an optimist.
It costs more there. I was going to say, was it average home price? It's like half mil.
It's funny. It's funny because I'm an idealist. I'm optimistic to a fault. John can attest to this, and I think that's what makes me conservative.
It's funny.
You have to be an optimist to be conservative. I think. You have to be. You can be an optimist and be leftist. I'm not saying you can't be, but I think you have to be an optimist to be conservative because ultimately, because what you're saying is, that people are capable of self-governance. That's a very high opinion of other people.
Never thought about that.
Yeah, but
so
leave people. Yeah, basically, it's leave people alone because people know best what's best for them. You don't.
Right.
Yeah,
and so
and it'll work out. It'll work. You know, despite all the flaws, like we're not. As a conservative, I'm not blind to the weaknesses of a free market. Like I understand there are weaknesses, externalities being the big one that I always talk about.
Right.
But as an optimist, I say, look, yes, there are weaknesses to the free market, and yes, people will abuse liberty and freedom if you give them too much.
Right.
But it'll work out. You know, it'll all work out. We have to make sure the abuses are not so bad that we reach a tipping point and people can't get to them. So. Annafi, this has been a great discussion. I really enjoyed it. We are definitely going to have you back on.
This was a lot of fun.
Yes, no, you definitely need to stay in touch with us. So make sure you're following us at ornery_opinions on Twitter. Yes, so we can DM you.
I think I already am.
And me.
Twitter might have separated us then. I couldn't DM you earlier.
I actually don't know anything about Twitter. I need a social media manager if anyone's listening and wants to do that.
I was gonna say I just started Twitter like a year ago, so I'm like
I am the social media manager per se of Ornery Opinions.
Well, so we should talk. All right.
If you wanna, we need to get synced together. All right. And
you can. Well, I was gonna say I'll say it this time because but it's an old pen name. But it's at Kamui Hiryoku. I already followed you, so it shouldn't be too.
Oh, sweet.
But yeah, I'm working on my Japanese these days. I speak a good amount of it.
That's awesome.
So
guys,
for you, so.
Audience, please follow Annafi Wahed at Annafi Wahed.
Yep.
Wahed. You gotta get that.
Gotta say it with the phlegm.
I've got to say this has been, I was kind of nervous going into this show just because I didn't want to like totally screw the pooch here. This has been very fun, very informative. I love having my ideas challenged, and I love the debate, and I love it when the debate makes you friendlier with the person and not antagonistic. Yeah. So welcome to our little club of friends.
Well, thank you. I'm honored.
Yeah, we will definitely have you back on in the future if you're up for it. Some of the topics that we kind of touched on, I would love to go into detail and actually have like the discussion.
For sure.
So, guys, make sure you're following at Annafi Wahed, and also make sure you're following her. The flip side. What's the @ for that on Twitter?
It's Know the Flip Side, like KNOW. So then you can. It's a 5-minute digest, and then you go in and you go about your day. Thanks so much, guys, for having me. And yes, please, and thank you for having honest discussions and debates and not being afraid to actually talk to liberals and have discussions about policy things. Because I feel like sometimes people have conversations like, oh, let's hug and be friends. But we can disagree and still be friends.
You should see Sunday dinners at my house.
That's got to be interesting. Yeah, or like conversation between me and my
This is never off. This is me like 24/7. I swear to God. It's not healthy. It's really not healthy. All right. Well, Annafi, thank you again for coming on to the show. Thanks again, guys, for your participation in the live chat. And make sure you are subscribing. Make sure you are following Annafi. And definitely check out her website because there's some really interesting articles that I saw that I read that I really enjoyed reading from both sides. These are the kind of debates and discussions we need to be having. So look for Annafi on the show again because we're definitely going to convert her to our side. Cookies.
Keep it.
All right. And you guys have a wonderful weekend. And thanks again for watching the show. Have a good night.